We have no problem providing our police with uniforms. We have actually paid for the new uniforms, and the new uniforms are being done. I asked the Principal Secretary in charge of the State Department of Interior, Dr. Kibicho, who chairs the technical team on the police reforms, to move around the country and look at the capacities we have in our factories, in our textile sector. He has visited Rivertex in Eldoret. He was in Nakuru yesterday. We have gone even to the EBZ zone. What is happening here, and I will speak about it bluntly, and let me make this revelation to you. The Inspector General, the PS, and myself have been under pressure by some quangles and all manner of spies that we should import police uniform. Listen to me very carefully. We will not import police uniform. Go and write another 10 headlines. We will not import police uniform from any country. We have to promote the local textile industry. Buy Kenya, build Kenya. How are we going to support our cotton farmers? How are we going to support our manufacturers and create jobs in our country? You know, this monkey business that has been going on for a period of time, we go to some shadowy corners and agree to import police uniform from some places and create excuses that... Isn't it simply outrageous that someone is saying we don't have material in Kenya with the kind of textile sector that we have? So why would the government put budget resources to revive Rivertex and provide jobs in Eldoret? Then we proceed like fools the following day to import police uniforms from Turkey or from China or from wherever. We have already paid. We are making uniform for our police, and take it to the bank from me. We will not import uniform. No amount of pressure, manipulation, or anything will change that position. That style of life has come to an end in Kenya. It has come to an end, and no one is going to live that way. Our uniforms will be made. We have 600 tailors at NYS and huge teams at NYS that are working on this. We'll make the uniforms for our forces in Kenya, create jobs for our people in Kenya, allow manufacturers in Kenya to supply government agencies. Sasa wewe na wakora wako mahali mlikubaliana mtanunua uniform, utaenda uwaeleze hivi, hatutanunua uniform kutoka kwingine. It's as simple as that, and you can write as many headlines as you want. We will not change that position. Na tuwache kudanganyana hapa. Hii ujeuri must come to an end in this country. Hii sasa unaenda huko, we will not do this kind of silly things that people have done over the years and try to mess up our country. We will ensure that everything that we need, that we can get in the country, we get it here. That is how we grow our industry. That is how we support our cotton farmers. That's how we support the manufacturing sector. The private sector understands what we are doing. Our president has been firm on this and has been speaking about this. So we can't live any other way. So if you thought that the headline is going to change our mind, now you know. Don't bother. Or if you want, you can go and do another 10 headlines. But we are not.
Decolonizing Africa starts with simple things. Starts with doing away with apartheid, colonial symbols, and colonial way of doing things. It must, we must, and even if it's not our generation, generations to come, we must have a language that unites Africans, like Swahili. If Swahili can be developed and it become a continental language, and then we do away with speaking to each other in English. Because that's what colonizers did. Divided us, made sure that we don't have a common language to communicate amongst ourselves, and then we use their language to communicate so that they can hear everything we say. So we need to do away with that. If we want Africa, which will be an equal competitor with the West and America. So it is through small things that we'll realize a total freedom of Africa, not only South Africa. I was very worried with those judges in Zimbabwe. Even our judges here, they wear those green things. I don't know what do these things represent. What is that? What symbol is that? Does it mean when you're wearing this thing, you can only think when you're wearing a wig that looks like the hair of white people? you're actually wearing white braids. The reason you think properly is that weak, according to colonialism. And then revolutionaries like ZANU-PF allows that to continue in Zimbabwe. They allow that to continue in Kenya. Well, Kenya, of course, is something different. I don't think there is a total independence there. America has got a huge interest in that affair, in that arrangement of Kenya. But everywhere else in the continent, we need to start doing away with those things. And pulling out of Commonwealth is one of the things we need to do to realize a complete sovereignty for South Africa. We must not be scared to say that. We must be hated. It might not happen now, but that is what we're envisaging for the future of South Africa. It might not be realized in our lifetime, but those who are coming after us should know what we stood for. We were anti-colonial, anti-imperialist, and therefore anything that represented imperialism and colonialism we reject. In the same way we reject Trump, in the same way we reject Theresa May, we reject everything that represented. When we said roads must fall, we meant exactly that we need to do away with symbols that represent colonialism. As we speak now, the EFF doesn't participate in the Commonwealth Parliament Forum. We don't. We don't. The EFF refuses to participate in multinational organizations that have got close links and relations with imperialism. We refuse. We don't. We don't do that. And our going to London, talking to business people in London, talking to business people in America, everywhere else, is not talking to imperialism. It's talking to individual potential investors. The same thing we can do in Nigeria. The same thing we can do in Kenya. We need a borderless continent. We need a continent with one currency. We need a continent with one parliament, which has got teeth and it will bite and hold the executives in countries accountable. And ultimately, we need one African president. We need United States of Africa. We supported and we continue to support those ideals of brother leader Gaddafi. We are following in the footsteps of those leaders. We are not saying they were perfect, some of them, but there are a lot of teachings that come from our leaders in the continent which we can follow because we think they will unite us. This thing was a one thing called Africa. This was one thing. It was divided by colonizers. These borders are artificial borders imposed on us by colonizers. Why do you want to behave like you are owning colonizers' properties? These borders are colonizers' properties, they are not ours. Let us go back to African unity. We want one voice, one Africa. We must stop doing away with African hate, which was instilled in us by the colonizers. When you say, hey, there are too many Zimbabweans here, there are too many Nigerians here, hey, you are doing the work of the devil, which is to divide Africans. Be angry with Nigerians and South Africans for doing crimes, the same, Zimbabweans, the same way you are with South Africans who commit crimes. They must be treated the same. It must not be because it's a Nigerian, it's a more crime. If a Nigerian kills a person, that killing is twice. As if the murder by South African is lesser than a Nigerian murder. It's wrong. Crime is crime. Let's deal with it as crime. When it is a white person in South Africa, undocumented, he's called an investor. Not only a white person, including Indians and Chinese. These Guptas didn't have proper papers here. These Guptas didn't have proper papers. No one dared called them Kwerekweres. No one. But if it was my African brothers, we're going to be called Kwerekweres because they don't have papers. Self-hate. It must come to an end. If it means making the EFF lose votes for that, let it lose votes. Lose votes on principle. Not on political expediency of wanting to appeal. This country belongs to Africans in the same way Nigeria belongs to South Africans.
Work permits for foreigners are supposed to be given for work which no Kenyan can do. When a fellow Chinese who cannot speak English is manning a gate and Kenyans are looking for jobs, what are you talking about, you fellows? Let's get to the bottom of this matter quickly. Lastly, can we afford 1 million shillings a day? What are you saying? These people are like, this thing is going to become like the port of Sierra Leone and Sri Lanka. We are going to sell our national treasure to these people. 66% of our debt, and it's growing, is to the Chinese. If you don't wake up and smell coffee, senators, and Mr. Kasakaja, I thank you for bringing this up. This is going to be something. They have given me problems. Senator was telling me about Imali Primary School. They split a school into two. The railway line is in the middle. The school is destroyed. They've refused to repair it. When they go to Makueni, when we complain, they go and bribe the teachers, give them 200,000, 300,000. We have a crisis. Sultan Ahmud had a flood recently. Why? Because of the standard gauge railway. That's the first time we had a flood there. They've blocked all culverts because of raising the railway. Let's get to the bottom of this matter, or history is going to judge us so harshly when we begin paying and selling our country to the Chinese, when we give them the port of Mombasa, Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, and part of Kenya, which we will give to the Chinese. I call it the road to Shanghai. Thank you.
There are three things that we need to consider. First, we need to consider what is the Chinese plan. The Chinese are building a new Silk Road. Okay, this Silk Road is both in terms of road, it's rail, and it's ports across Africa, Europe, and Asia. Why are they doing this? Because they want to be the center of commerce. That is their idea. And this idea has to be understood with the mind of a Shylock. If you go to a Shylock and he determines you do not have money to pay him back, and he tells you, give me your title deed, I will give you 5,000 shillings, and your title deed is worth 500,000, he is very sure that you will default and he will get the land. Therefore, the Chinese mentality in loaning countries that can hardly afford to pay them back the money to build this infrastructure is they are willing to lose the money to gain the infrastructure. That is the Chinese mindset. The mindset of African countries, and I hope Kenya is an exception, though the signs tell me they're not, is that any money is good money from whoever. And therefore, what we have done is, in the need to expedite our infrastructure and expedite the process of our development, we've taken on more than we can chew. The third mindset is now specific to the SGR. Is it a viable project? There are two ways to look at infrastructure. You can look at infrastructure that pays for itself in terms of the other parts of the economy. Public transport in much of the world is subsidized by the government. So what the government of Kenya is doing is not exceptional. The question we have to ask is there enough business generated and jobs generated out of the SGR to justify its existence? And that might not be justifiable now. It may be justifiable in 10, 13 years, but we have to prove that the year-on-year growth of the transportation of goods.
You are asking people not to sell. You are asking transport not to take the number of passengers they are usually taking. If they don't do that, what are you going to do? A shopkeeper who is closing his or her small shop, where he or she gains her livelihood, for 90 days, how is he or she going to survive? You are not telling me how that person is going to live. And yet you want to convince me to say yes, 90 days. And even 45 days, I don't agree with. 45 days, 1 month, 15 days, 1.5 months. Can you imagine a family person who struggles to make the ends meet by selling this or that, and you ask that person to stop that? And you expect that person to be able to prevent himself or herself from this virus. What means does he or she have to do that? To eat is fundamental.
You know, you raised a very important point. Kwame Nkrumah was very keen on building what he called the United States of Africa, which Gaddafi was also talking about. There was a big debate in 1963 at the OAU formation between Nyerere and Kwame Nkrumah. Kwame Nkrumah was saying, ladies and gentlemen, let us not get too comfortable in our little states. Let's quickly move to the United States of Africa. Because when you become too comfortable in your nation state, you don't want to relinquish your position as president. Nyerere was saying, no, let's do it brick by brick. We move slowly, gradually to integration. We build a SADC type institution, we build ECOWAS, we build Maghreb, and then eventually we have the United States of Africa through gradualism. But that was a problem because that's what they decided to do. Kwame lost in that debate. And so they went the route of gradualism. Now, here's the problem. When we are successful as the African Union, when you have the United States of Africa, there will be one president in the whole continent. Now, tell those African leaders. There will be no president in Malawi. There will be no president in Zimbabwe. There will be no president in South Africa. Maybe the guy will be from Cameroon. Cyril Ramaphosa will be Minister of Tourism for Africa. Is he ready? Emerson Mnangagwa will be Minister of Chiefs for Africa. Is he ready? Mutharika will be a chief. So the African leader is the stumbling block. They want to be president of starving people. America has 300 million people and a GDP of $19 trillion. They have one president, they're doing just fine. China, $11 trillion, population 1.2 billion people, one president, and they're doing just fine. So it's possible for this whole continent to be run by one cabinet with one president. But the current leaders, little Botswana, little South Africa, are not ready. So they talk regional integration, they don't action it. So Nkrumah was right. Gaddafi